Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and in this video I want to talk about 3 things relating to the power creep situation in Honkai Star Rail. All of us know when Imbibitor Lunae first came out, and now that Jingliu is out, she is contending with him with like the best DPS in the game. We're going to share some thoughts about that based on what the community is now talking about. I'll share with you my personal opinions as well. And you know we don't waste time on this channel, so I'm just going to like go straight in with the first point. How is the power creep situation in Honkai Star Rail? I think every time a new DPS comes out, it's like natural, because if someone does nice damage, everyone will be like comparing them to a previous DPS, and stuff like that. But more bigger than that, you actually need to see the nature of the characters that are being introduced. So far from what they've seen, we have overlaps in terms of the paths. We have many destruction characters, like 3 destruction characters within like 3 patches or 4 patches, very quick. But actually, if you look at the split in elements, we don't have an overlap with the exception of Jingliu as well as Kafka in terms of the DPS category. But some will argue that Kafka could be a more supportive role, and Jingliu is like the traditional crit DPS for the lightning category as well. So in that case, everyone is unique. Imbibitor Lunae here, Zila here, Jingliu here, you have Jingliu here, Topaz, Nambi, Argenti, and Blade. All of them fulfill very different categories altogether, based on up to the information we know in version 1.5 as well. So that being said, none of them actually truly power creep one another, because destruction as a path, even though they do like similar in terms of AoE damage, strong amounts of damage, we are not factoring in the element typing. Right now, the enemies in the game don't have many, they have many weaknesses and don't have like super high resistance to the element that they are resistant on, with the exception of a few mobs that are much more resistant to like quantum and imaginary and certain typings. But by and large, there's a lot of weaknesses, so elements right now in the game don't feel very crucial. The one that is becoming more important is whether it's single target or whether it's, for example, AoE in nature. And because less single target, so Zila falls out of meta, more AoE, characters like Imbibitor Lunae, Jingliu feels much more better to play, but that would be actually incorrect moving forward. That is just a current snapshot of the game state. In order to understand power creep fully, we need to look at their entire kit rather than who deals like the most collective damage. AoE characters always will win single target characters when you talk about collective damage, but more importantly, we need to focus in terms of the element itself to see the power creep situation. Even a character like Yenting doesn't get power crept by a character like Jingliu, and let me explain why. Her overall kit, we are without E1 of course, because E1 increases the amount of damage she deals to a single target unit by 100% of her attack. Without that, she's definitely much more favored to be an AoE DPS, whereas a character like Yenting is much more suited to be a single target DPS specialist as well. And of course, standard banner characters are always going to be power crept by limited characters. That's just the nature and revenue business of gacha games. So that is the first aspect. I don't think there's any overlap so far, and any comparisons made between verticals are missing a very key point of not really distinguishing the element, because you could have slightly less DPS, but you are of a totally different element and address a totally different type of content. Which brings me to my second question: does Jingliu and Imbibitor Lunae, like, who do I think is better? And of course, if you already heard the first segment, it's very difficult to say which one is better, because fundamentally they are both different type of elemental units. They have very different weaknesses. He uses a lot of skill points, likes to play a little bit more in, for example, a skill point hungry team. And I know you guys are looking at this crit rate 42%, but it's because I actually share the light cone for Blade for both of them. This one gives 18%, if any of you are wondering why this is so low. But anyway, I digress. So he skill point hungry, likes to play a little bit more hyper carry. Jingliu, on the other hand, has HP consumption issues and also has downtime in her overall kit. So once you address these 2 weaknesses, you realize that the supports that they fundamentally play with are a little bit different. So what do I mean? For Imbibitor Lunae's case, Yukong, E6 likely will be a very strong DPS for him. She doesn't work well with Jingliu. Pella, E4, very strong support for Jingliu, but not really that good for Imbibitor Lunae. The defense break is nice, but not like super excellent. So they fundamentally use like very different cores. Of course, universal supports like, for example, Bronya as well as Tingyun, who are generally like known to be very good supports, are usable for both. But then it's not in the fault of the DPS characters, it's just rather these characters are just very well designed, very versatile to fit into many different situations. And that is my opinion. Fundamentally playing into a little bit different playstyle, very different weaknesses, will form very different team compositions. They don't fight among like the exact same team composition. For example, I don't think anyone else in the game will fight over E6 Yukong as much as Imbibitor Lunae, and I don't think anyone else in the game will fight as much with Jingliu for Pella, other than maybe Yanqing because of the same typing issue as we mentioned in the first part. So weaknesses aside, team comps aside, and whatever they are doing, the elemental differences aside, I don't think they are compared apple to apple, and it's not really fair to do so as well. So in my opinion, looking at damage numbers, who does more damage from these two at the micro level, I don't think it makes a bit of difference. To me, they are about in the same tier. Both of them are one of the best DPSs in the game. Very strong. They fulfill very good AoE damage category. With E1, of course, she becomes has a bit more single target utility, which is interesting to note. But more importantly, I think in terms of flexibility, which is what I personally like to cover on this channel, because in a gacha game, you have lack of resources. You don't have the ability to like pull every single character like I do, because I do testing for you guys to give you more guides. If you don't have the ability to pull every character, you want to know how much a character can do outside of their particular niche. For a character like Blade, even though he doesn't have like the highest DPS in the game, is a very, very strong unit because of his flexibility. Able to fit into a lot of teams because he doesn't consume so much skill points, he only consumes his own HP. So if you smack on like a healer just to sustain him, he more or less can fit into a lot of rosters as a secondary DPS, doing a lot of damage already. So that is a factor that I think a lot of people are not focusing on when they just consider like the amount of DPS a character can do. So that is like the second part of it, the comparison between these two characters and my thoughts on it. And the third last category I want to talk about is where do we go from here, which is really the question everyone needs to be asking, because right now after we get Argenti, we will have every single DPS character in the game of that particular typing. And what is very, very critical is what then would they introduce to start to sell more DPSs, because that's when the true power creep happens. Power creep doesn't happen like this across different elemental verticals. It will happen, for example, we will get a quantum AoE DPS, we might get, for example, a Hunt imaginary DPS, we might get a limited 5-star Hunt Ice DPS as well, and these are all ways that they can explore the game. I think how Hoyoverse might approach it moving forward is making that the new character being added into the game of like a DPS category is going to be synergetic with the existing cast, like one of them. So for example, maybe we have a Hunt character like Yanqing, that maybe synergizes very nicely with an AoE character like, for example, like Jingliu. I think that would be a very interesting way to look at things moving forward, rather than just increasing like the DPS output. At least you make, for example, another character currently in the game stronger with their presence, so maybe a bit of a sub DPS kind of flashiness, especially when you have very popular characters like these two over here. So that's my thoughts moving forward, but I think more importantly than just looking at the DPS categories, the other option or the bigger worry for me is looking at the support category. We currently have very, very strong supports here with Lota. We have Fucc, and likely the new Huohuo, who is a 5-star abundance character, is also going to be very, very strong if the trend continues based on the supportive 5-star, defensive 5-star cast. The question is, where else are they going to introduce new 5-star defensive units, and how are they going to play into it? The only thing that we currently don't really have is like an energy buffer from a defensive role, similar to, for example, like Tingyun. We don't have a skill point buffer in a defensive role, which is something that he would really like, and I think those are factors that are worth considering to add to our roster, and that's the gaps that currently can be filled. And of course, your offensive supports, we are missing a 5-star Harmony unit, which is definitely likely going to come out anytime soon, because we still don't have a 5-star Harmony, and the Harmony character that appears as a 5-star with the same element typing for the first time is probably going to skyrocket the DPS in the game with the correct element into the number 1 position, because of course, same typing benefits, as well as Planetary Rendezvous, which buffs same type damage. I'm just looking for Harmony character, which is this one here that I'm mentioning. With this Planetary Rendezvous, you immediately get some same type synergies of 24% damage just from a light cone. Of course, this is super imposition 5. And yeah, that's just my short take on the current game state and about power creep situation that a lot of you seem to be very concerned with. I don't think it's a very significant problem right now, and if you are sitting on the fence pulling and worried about the future, I think more needs to be seen, especially once they finish Argenti's banner and finishing this first wave of new characters. Where they go after likely will set the tone and direction for the game's longevity. I'm interested in that as an analyst's point of view. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.